Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Hello. Happy Tuesday. I wanted to say happy Monday for a second there, but it is a Classic Trials Tuesday. Andy, jump up. Come on. Oh, man. No, she is resisting today. She is saying no chair today. Actually, let me adjust this a little bit anyway. Yeah, okay. Or was it better before? No, that's fine. Okay. Alrighty. So happy Boxing Day, right? And Merry Christmas to everybody who celebrates. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. Great Christmas break. Hopefully, not everyone. I know there are some folks that work over the Christmas holiday. So I decided to take a little bit of a break, which was nice. This week is going to be a little bit of a lighter week. There's probably going to be one video coming out. Actually, I'm planning on having one video come out. I shouldn't say probably, but that's going to be one last one on Jonathan Majors. I think I talked about it last week, perhaps. But yeah, it's one more where I talked with an MD about the injuries in there, and we had a very, very fascinating conversation. So anyway, so today we have one more episode with Erik Menendez. So this is Erik, part 11 of his testimony, according to our series. Episode 51. One last episode for 2023 before we re-end the new year, and then start with episode 52 on the 2nd, I guess. Yeah, not because I'm planning on taking January 1st off. So it'll be a Tuesday next week as well. Anyway, so today is the last episode hearing from Erik. We will be hearing from new witnesses. Well, I don't know about new witnesses, but other witnesses starting next episode. So here we've got some more recross and I think some redirect from him. And then one of the juries is going to leave, and then we're going to see more cross-examination. So get ready for a lot more Kuriyama. Anyway, okay. So that's that. We can go ahead and get started. As always, we're probably going to get into some crazy sensitive stuff. So trigger warning for everybody who has been through some stuff and is, has a hard time or otherwise has a hard time with any of these kinds of topics. We've got all kinds of abuse going on here in this case, as most or all of you probably know at this point. So occasionally, one of the mods in the chat is probably going to put up some trigger warnings in the chat and some resources as well for folks that need to talk to someone if they're having a really hard time with it. So I'll put those on the screen from time to time as well as usual. And of course, as always, if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll be monitoring chat. So, if there are any questions that pop up in the chat, I will save those and then I'll pause and address them from time to time. So, if I don't respond in chat right away, just know I probably almost definitely see it and have saved it. And yeah, we'll address. So. Okay. And thanks so much for this, Debbie Faison Cook. One of my fantastic mods. I have a great group of mods here, by the way. Debbie Faison Cook says, help Legal Bites out by hitting the like button, y'all. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It does actually help with YouTube algorithm gods. If you do hit the like button, it's like the least bit of engagement that you can give that does help to push this video out there. So, alrighty. Okay. And I think that's about it. Uh Nick Wilson question, is Draco still awake? LOL. I don't know actually. I hope Draco Amy's okay. I don't see her in the chat, but maybe at some point she'll join in, and if not, no worries because it's a crazy hour for her anyway. Okay. All right, guys. That's about it. Yes. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's jump into it then, shall we? Here we go.
I hope in the future is gone.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any examination on behalf of
Co-defendant?
No.
Any recross?
Thank you.
Mr. Menendez, you recall the testimony of your brother on September 17th, wherein he stated that you and he had gone to the Big Five store in Santa Monica?
Never mind. I just want to know which September 17th.
I believe he said that.
And he had testified in front of these juries that you and he had inquired about handguns in that Big Five store in Santa Monica, correct?
I don't know. If he did, then he did.
And he further testified that you and he were in the process of buying a handgun when you were told you weren't going to be able to leave the store with the handgun. Do you remember that?
I know he testified to that, yes.
And that it would take 2 weeks.
Yes, that's what I mainly remember.
And do you recall testimony that you gave on September 27th,
That I recall better.
volume 94? And this is a question by your attorney, Mrs. Abramson, in which she asks you, on Friday, did you hear your brother testify that you went with him to a gun store, a Big Five in Santa Monica? And you responded, yeah. And inquire about buying handguns? Yes. And were you told that there was a 2-week waiting period? Yes. Is that true? Yes. Did you do that? Yes. Do you remember all of that?
Yes, we did do that. That's exactly right.
Do you remember testifying on October 1st regarding the Big Five in Santa Monica?
What day is October 1st?
It was a Friday.
Last Friday.
Yes.
Do you remember testifying about the Big Five store in Santa Monica?
Objection, Baker.
Overruled.
With you questioning me?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Do you remember testifying that you saw the handguns in a glass case?
I believe I said that. If you could show me the testimony, then I'd be able to clarify one second.
I'll put you on.
You have it there?
Yes.
Yes.
They're trying to impeach him on some detail about the Big Five sporting goods store.
16,485.
In case anyone's lost, so what Kuriyama is doing here is he's bringing Erik, he's bringing to his attention things that he's testified to about the Big Five sporting goods store. And so first it was on direct, the questions that Leslie asked him about, the different guns in the store and all that. And then he's bringing up his testimony from his cross-examination and reading him the testimony that he gave on cross-examination. And my guess is there's going to be some kind of detail that is different so that he can impeach him. The question is the jury going to care about it? Because there's so much that has gone on in this cross-examination that this detail could very well be missed, and the jury could be like, that's a detail that I don't really care about. Because sometimes trial lawyers can get totally wrapped up in, ooh, I caught you in one inconsistency, and then be like, yes, I got him. But the jury is sometimes willing to forgive some inconsistencies, sometimes not willing to forgive other inconsistencies. So here the question is this one going to matter? Is it that kind of a difference that is going to matter all that much? So anyway, but at the same time, this is a weird way to impeach him, because now he's probably going to ask him questions about, oh, you testified this, you testified that. And now he's going to have to ask him some questions about the inconsistencies, which is not a good way to impeach a witness, because it gives the witness an opportunity to explain how it's actually consistent. So we'll see how Erik handles this moving forward. The better way to impeach someone is in the moment on cross-examination, if there is a difference, to catch it in the moment and bring up the testimony from before, page and line number, have that lickety split, and then impeach them. Otherwise, like, it's not something that is going to have much punch to it, and the jury might be like, what's happening, why this is taking so long, and their focus might not be retained in the process, and they might be like, I don't understand what just happened. So anyway, so let's see how this plays out.
Take a look at your testimony.
Yes. Yes.
Now, you testified that you saw handguns in a glass case, correct?
Yes.
And you identified them as being handguns, correct?
Yes, they were.
Do you remember page 16,486? You remember testifying, sir, that you asked if these were real. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember me asking you, and what did he say? That is the clerk to the store.
Yes.
And you stated, he said he pointed out which ones were and which ones were not. I believe the ones that were not were over to the right. That is the pellet guns or the BB guns. I believe they were over to the right. And the real ones were more in the center where I was. Do you remember making that statement?
Can I finish the paragraph?
Yes.
I said, that's my recollection. I could be wrong.
Do you see
But that is my recollection.
That you saw.
Okay, so do you see that? That's an example of a witness being like, I see the inconsistency that you're talking about, and I'm going to show how I wasn't lying, how I wasn't being untruthful, how in the moment when I said that, I said I could be wrong. So he's pointing out like, hey, this is, I was trying to be as fair and accurate as possible in that particular moment. So again, this is not the cleanest way to do an impeachment, and I really don't think this is worth doing an impeachment over, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe another attorney has a different opinion, but I just don't. I don't see why this is worth the time and the resources and the attention of the jury.
Real guns, and he told you where the real guns were.
That I could be wrong about, but that I saw real guns, yes. When I left that store that day, I believe they were real guns to this day.
And at some point, you picked out a handgun that you thought was appropriate. Is that right? And you answered yes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you testified further that as soon as we said, that one looks good and that type of thing, we talked about, could we get it now?
Excuse me,
Correct.
Counsel, would you cite where you're reading? from?
16,488,
Yes, what?
line 9. You
I
remember?
would object if that's misreading.
Do you remember testifying in that way? You can look at the testimony yourself.
Would you like me to read the paragraph?
Go ahead.
Your question too? You said, do you recall the caliber that you decided on? And I said, I really don't. I wasn't, as soon as we said, that one looks good and that type of thing, we talked about, could we get it now? How do you go about buying it? That's when he told us there was some sort of waiting period. And so I didn't, it wasn't an in-depth discussion.
And you indicated to him that you needed to buy 2 handguns, correct?
I believe that's what I indicated to him.
And you remember him telling you that you could not leave the store with the handgun, correct?
Judge, mistakes, testimony.
Overruled, that's a question.
If you could show me it,
Did you testify to that?
that I could not leave the store with the handgun, I don't believe so.
You don't recall testifying that way?
Objection, Your Honor, there is no such testimony.
Okay, counsel, let's just objection. That's not an evidence.
That-
Okay, objection overruled was a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you remember, sir, me asking you the question, page 16,005 store on the morning of August 18th to buy these handguns? Your answer, definitely, without a doubt, I did.
Yes.
And you and Lyle did. And you answered yes, correct?
Yes.
And then the question was, and you and Lyle actually looked in this case and you selected these guns and you were told you couldn't leave the store with those handguns because there's a 15-day wait. And you answered yes.
Yes.
And then the question was, Mr. Menendez, did you know that Big Five stopped carrying handguns on March of 1986? And you said, no, I don't know that, correct?
Well, that wasn't the end of my answer.
Do you remember making this statement, sir?
I said, no, I don't know that, Mr. Kuriyama. There were guns there. We did look at them, and he did say we could not carry them anymore.
So you couldn't carry them out of the store that day?
No, that's not what I said.
See, here's the other thing is that if the jury is paying attention to this impeachment right here, they're also paying attention to the reading back of the testimony. So if Kuriyama characterizes it, recharacterizes it, and he does so in a way that is not accurate, the jury's going to look at that and be like, that's not what he said. Like, that's not what he said. And the problem with that for Kuriyama is that can also start to chip away at any kind of trust they might have in him. Although realistically, the jury doesn't necessarily have any trust in any of the attorneys on either side because they know that they are there to advocate for a particular side in the trial. But this is an example of a not so great impeachment here because he's putting the page and line number in front of Erik from multiple points of testimony. Not great because he didn't catch him in the moment to just compare him to the previous testimony and that's it. B, he didn't, and he probably is doing this now at this late stage because he probably didn't hear the inconsistency when it happened. So there's been, we've talked a little bit about how it seems like Kuriyama is not paying attention or he hasn't been paying attention. And so when he's asking questions, it's like there's stuff that has been gone over before. And there's also stuff that like he asks questions in a way that seems strange if you've been paying attention during this trial. So it seems like he's not paying attention. Maybe he's just playing it that way. Trial is theater after all. But to me, it doesn't seem like he's just playing it here because if he were really listening, he would have caught this potential inconsistency in the moment on cross-examination, however many days ago. And then he wouldn't have to be doing this over a recross. Now, at the same time, the way that he's going about it, he's trying to read back the testimony that Erik has given in the past and giving snippets of it. And realistically, he has to allow the witness to round out the testimony a bit because he's like, that's not the end of my answer. Let me read my full answer. And this is great on Erik. This shows that he's been trained fairly well, not trained, but he's been prepared in a good way for this cross-examination and for this recross now, to assert himself in a kind and polite way as he's doing, but assert himself and to say, that was not my full answer. Here's my full answer. It's great. That's what any witness really should do. And that's what any attorney should be prepared for any witness to do. So let's continue on.
Sir, are you now trying to tell these juries that it was a pellet gun you were looking at that day?
No, what I'm saying now is that I still believe that there were handguns in the store that I went to. And whether the store, I'm saying now that I was wrong about something. The store that the Big Five was not on Santa Monica Boulevard, 1 to 2 blocks from the freeway. the store that I remember going to was. But if I did go to the Santa Monica Big Five, I still believed that they carried handguns, and apparently they didn't. So my impression was wrong.
Do you remember testifying that the Santa Monica Big Five store was the closest Big Five to your house?
That I knew of, yes.
So you had been to the Santa Monica Big Five store before?
I don't remember being so, but I'm sure that I did.
Because you testified that you knew where it was. You knew it was the closest one to your house.
I knew that it was the closest one to my house. I didn't know there was any near my house closer than that.
The man at the Big Five store in Santa Monica told you couldn't leave the store with those handguns, correct?
I don't remember exactly what he said, but my impression was that we had to wait 2 weeks. That was
Are you
my
now saying
impression.
that you're assuming that that's what he said?
Excuse me?
When you were questioned by your counsel, you said that you assumed that they were real, wherein you had testified that he had told you that they were real, and you said the real ones were in the center where you were, and the fake ones were off to the side, correct?
No, I said that that's what my impression was, but that I could be wrong is exactly what I said. But it's still my impression.
You were told those are real handguns you were looking at. And now that you know that Big Five didn't have real handguns, you're coming up with a different story, aren't you, sir?
Sir, I described exactly where Big Five was to you. I described exactly where it was. I knew you could easily go and check it out. I wasn't lying to you. I still believe that the gun store that I went to carried handguns. When I left that store, my impression was that they looked exactly like real handguns, that they were real handguns. That's what I thought when I left the store, and that's what I thought when I testified. You shocked me when you said that there were no handguns there. I thought you also meant there were no anything that looked like handguns there. And my impression is now there were real handguns there. That's what I believe.
You testified that, in fact, the clerk had told you there were real handguns. In fact, told you couldn't leave the store without waiting for 15 days with that handgun, correct?
Objection asked.
No, that's not exactly what I said. I testified that the clerk said that these are real and that these are not. And I said, I believe that's what he said. And I said that he testified I couldn't leave the store without waiting 15 days.
Sir, if there weren't real handguns in the store, you could have bought any one of those pellet guns, correct? And you left the store that day.
I don't know what the waiting period is on pellet guns.
Well, is there a waiting period on BB guns and pellet guns?
What I'm saying is, I don't know if there is.
Now, he would not have told you that you had a 15-day waiting period unless you were talking about real handguns,
Objection,
correct?
it calls for speculation.
Yep.
In fact, you had seen, or you testified, you saw these real handguns,
Yes.
and that the clerk told you you couldn't leave with the real handgun unless you waited 15 days. Isn't that true?
In that paraphrase, I don't know how I could answer that, but my memory is that I had a conversation with the clerk and that Lyle was there, and that there were other people around, and that we had a discussion about real handguns. And I believe to this day that the guns in that glass case were real, and that he said that we had to wait 15 days to buy a handgun.
Were you imagining this?
No, I wasn't imagining it, sir. It's still in my memory. It's still there. And that's what happened.
Now, you've had about a week to think about what you're going to tell these jurors to explain how you lied about this.
Objection.
I didn't lie.
Argumentative.
Objection sustained. Please raise the question.
Have you been discussing this with your brother?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overrule.
Calls for hearsay.
Overrule.
Certainly I did.
You talked about how we're going to get out of this one?
No, I'll tell you what I have been thinking over the last week, if you'd like me to, though.
Now, you've been thinking about what you can say to explain how there aren't any handguns at the store you said you were at. Is that right?
No, sir. What I was thinking about,
No question pending. Now, Mr. Menendez, you indicated that on August 18th you were suicidal, correct?
yes, I was.
And you had a meeting set up with Dr.
Objection, that misstates his testimony.
He's going to overrule it because he
You
already
had
answered.
a session set up with Dr. Oziel for that day, correct?
I don't believe I did so anymore on August 18th. I had canceled it by then.
You had decided that you wouldn't go to see Dr. Oziel because you had spoken to your brother and you decided that you'd kill your parents instead of killing yourself. Isn't that right?
Definitely not.
Have a moment, Sean.
Paper.
Mr. Menendez, you indicated that your mother was about as tall as your brother, right?
No, I said that I thought she was 3 inches shorter than him.
And do you remember me asking you whether you were aware that the coroner had measured your mother as 5'2"? That I didn't tell you that that's how tall she was, but I indicated to you that the coroner had measured her at 5'2". Isn't that correct?
Yes, apparently.
Did your counsel misstate that?
No,
Excuse me, could you ask that question?
Yeah, did your counsel misstate the question when she asked you?
Object to what his counsel said, Your Honor. It's not
Rephrase the question.
Do you remember when your counsel said that Mr. Kuriyama said that your mother was 5'2"?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as a-
apparently the coroner was wrong.
Okay, the question I asked you is whether you were aware that the coroner had measured your mother at 5'2", correct?
The question that you asked?
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
Making a difference of 2 or 3 inches, I think, if I remember correctly.
I have nothing further to say.
Oh, thank goodness. On to
Mr. Menendez,
redirect.
you were anxious to tell us what you were thinking. So what were you thinking?
When?
When Mr. Kuriyama asked you what you were thinking this last week after you realized that at least as far as a Big Five in Santa Monica, they don't sell real handguns, just things that look like handguns.
Well,
So
the handguns, they just use pellets. I was thinking about how I could be wrong when I was quite sure that I was right.
yeah, well, you were quite sure you were right about your mother buying a gun at the Sports Mart that she bought at Best, right?
Well, I'm not doubting all of my memories. No,
Okay.
she did do that.
She did do that, but you had the name of that store wrong too, didn't you?
Yeah, apparently she bought it at Best and not Smart Mart.
Let me ask you something. In your family, if your father was asking you questions and you didn't have complete answers with all the blanks filled in, what would happen to you?
Objection irrelevant.
Do you have a habit and pattern and custom when being pressured for answers to do something?
Objection irrelevant. Sustain.
I'd like to be heard on this, Your Honor.
Now you're asking why he answered something a certain way?
Asking if he has a tendency to fill in blanks.
Ask him, rather than that, which is irrelevant. That's-
If he did
focusing on
here.
Something specific.
With respect to this conversation with a clerk in some sporting goods store, okay?
Yes.
In your memory, before you testified about this, were there blank parts?
Of course.
Do you have a tendency with respect to answering that kind, well, strike that. In answering those questions for Mr. Kuriyama, did you fill in the blanks?
I thought,
Objection vague.
I didn't remember exactly what the clerk said, but I thought that there were real handguns there, and so I thought that he said that.
You thought he had actually said they were real
Objection.
handguns. Is that what you're
Sustain.
saying?
Objection sustained, answer.
You thought he really said what?
That there were real handguns there.
Even though you didn't remember him really saying that.
Objection lead.
Objection sustained.
Did you actually remember him saying that?
I don't have a clear memory of, no, I don't have a memory of him saying those words, but I have a memory of discussing it, I thought.
Mr. Menendez, do you know what it's like when people are having a conversation where one's talking about apples and the other one's talking about oranges?
Objection irrelevant. Sustain.
Is it possible, given your memory, that you misunderstood the clerk?
It's
Objection,
po-
closed for speculation.
it's possible, but it's possible.
Did you believe that you were looking at real handguns?
Yes,
Did you mention to him you needed a gun for protection?
yes,
You think a BB gun is useful for protection?
no.
Nothing further.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, you fill in the blanks, and you were kind of confused as to whether this was the Big Five store. Is that right? Is that what you're trying to say now?
Objection, that's a compound.
No, I don't mean to say that I fill in the blanks. I thought that we had a conversation about real handguns. I know that he didn't point to every handgun and say, no, that isn't real. But I thought that the other ones were real. I still,
Now, you were saying that you might have been confused about which store your mother had bought a gun a year earlier, correct?
apparently I was.
You remember that gun you said when your mother got it, you were hoping that she would kill your father with it?
Yeah, I was hoping that.
Now, is it your understanding that your brother was confused about buying or going to the Big Five in Santa Monica, and that your own attorney was also confused as well as
Your
you?
Honor, I'm going to object on two different bases. Number one,
All right, objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
Okay. Could it be, Mr. Menendez, that your brother, you, and your lawyer were all confused about the Big Five store in
Objection,
San
Your Honor.
Diego and Santa Monica?
Objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
Mr. Menendez, you've heard your own brother say that you went to the Big Five store in Santa Monica, correct?
Yes,
You've testified to that unequivocally. You said without a doubt, correct?
that I went there. I believe that without a doubt that I did.
And your attorney even asked you the question, are you sure you went to that Santa Monica
she
Big
got
Five
that
store?
information from me. She wasn't there with me when I was looking at the handgun.
So she wasn't confused.
object to what I was or wasn't, Your Honor.
All right, just rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Are you
That's the
saying
proper
that your brother
objection.
was also confused about this?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
No, my brother didn't know it was a Big Five before he testified. I told him that 2 years ago when we were discussing, we were trying to figure out the store we went to in San Diego.
And you're positive about that?
Oh, I know that. He's sure that we went there to look at guns.
Okay.
And he apparently remembers that we were in the process of buying it. I don't remember that.
Thank you.
I don't think you finished the answer.
All right, then if you want to have the finish, you can answer it. Right.
May I do it from here? Did you finish, Mr. Menendez?
No, I hadn't.
Why don't you finish?
I can remember where I was.
Let me ask you a question. Now, you said 2 years ago your brother wasn't sure what the store was where you were gifted the handguns in Los Angeles.
Yeah, he apparently thought it was,
Objection, this takes the evidence.
Overruled.
yes.
And you convinced him it was the Big Five in Santa Fe.
I told him that that's absolutely what it was because that's what I remembered it was.
Did him a favor.
No, I didn't do him a favor. I explained to him how we got there in Santa Monica and how it was 2 blocks away from the freeway and how I was absolutely positive about that, and that it was the Big Five.
Mr. Menendez, do you believe the 405 freeway is in Santa Monica?
I thought it was.
Honestly,
I
that's,
have a clear memory of.
Let's use the freeway, the San Diego freeway. Do you believe it's in the city of Santa Monica?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
that's a pretty easy mistake to make. I mean, growing up in Southern California, I did not grow up in this specific area on the west side of Los Angeles. However, I feel like that's a mistake that someone could definitely make. Granted, actually, given the point that Erik also did not grow up in this area. Remember, he grew up in New Jersey and then spent a couple years in Calabasas, which is not Beverly Hills or West Hollywood or Santa Monica or any of these Century City, this area of West Los Angeles. That's like up in some hills, like a little bit north and east, a little bit. It's a very nice area, beautiful area, but it's not geographically the same place as Beverly Hills. So I can understand Erik not being familiar enough, especially if he technically doesn't have a license. I mean, who knows how much he's actually been driving around. I can completely understand him getting confused and thinking the 405 freeway touches Santa Monica, which it doesn't. You've got to get onto the 10 freeway, go west, and that will take you to Santa Monica. But if you're not from Southern California, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And I will say that that is a very easy mistake to make. So I can, and also these neighborhoods / cities, Santa Monica is technically its own city. Beverly Hills is, I believe, a neighborhood of Los Angeles. They all touch each other. It's hard to know where one ends and another one begins unless like you really, really know the area. So I can completely understand his geographical confusion here with all of these different questions. And I don't think that any of it really matters at the end of the day. Like really, like these are not the kind of distinctions that make really any kind of a difference to whether or not people think that he's being honest or that he actually did the things that he says he did or didn't do the things, or things happened to him in the way that he says that he does or that they did. I mean, I guess, hey, when you think that there's an important point as an attorney, you want to go for it. You want to go down that rabbit hole. Fine. I don't think that this was worth it, in my opinion. I think this was a waste of 20 minutes of everyone's time.
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Step down. Let's just figure that out.
Okay. So now there's going to be a recess, and I'm going to fast forward here.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is take a recess here. Excuse the gold jury for the balance of the day. The blue jury will remain because there's further testimony that will.
Sometimes that when I say that, and then he says like the things that I just said, even though it's unfair because I've already, kind of gone through the testimony a little bit. It makes me feel like I'm like, yeah, see, I called it. I don't know. It's silly. Anyway, let's continue.
And before we do that, we'll get the defendant, Lyle Menendez, remove him from the courtroom. All right, the blue jury is back in the courtroom, and now cross-examination before that jury only.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you have testified that your father spoke with you about disinheriting you in September of 1988, correct?
He did disinherit me. That's pretty cool. Yes.
In fact, sir, he did.
So to clarify, we are now just in front of one jury. I think this is the Erik Menendez jury. He, as in the Judge Weisberg, indicated which color badge the jury is. I can't remember who's got which color, but my guess is because Lyle is no longer in the courtroom, that it's probably Erik Menendez's jury.
He did not disinherit you. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Now, in September of 1988, did something occur that precipitated your father discussing with you that he was going to disinherit you?
He never told me why he was disinheriting me.
Do you recall something occurring during the month of September 1988 that gave you the idea that it was the reason why your father wanted to disinherit you?
I didn't know why he wanted to disinherit me, but something did occur in September of 1988.
Now, in July of 1988, you and your brother committed burglaries, correct?
Craig Signorelli, my brother, and I.
Now, there were two houses involved, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The home of Mr. and Mrs. John List
Yes, sir.
and the home of Mr. and Mrs. Michael Ginsburg.
Yes.
Now, with respect to Mr. and Mrs. John List, are you saying that your brother was there?
No.
And according to the stipulation that was entered into earlier in the case, it reads as follows. Between July 1st, 1988 and July 10th, 1988, Erik Menendez and a friend were at the home of another friend, John List Jr., whose parents were away on vacation. While searching for the keys to a van, Erik and his friend found a piece of paper bearing the combination to the List family safe. After the safe was opened, Erik removed money and property. Correct?
Correct that that's what the stipulation says? Yes.
Now, you're saying that the friend that was with you was Craig Signorelli with respect to the List house, correct?
Yes, he was.
You're the one that entered the safe and took out money and jewelry, correct?
Objection, I thought we just had a ruling on this.
Overruled.
Yes, I did it with Craig.
You're the one that went into the safe, not Craig Signorelli. You went into the safe and removed money and jewelry, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative. It's not what it is saying.
Overruled.
No, sir. If I did it alone, then Craig wouldn't have done it with me. He was with me when we were looking for the keys, as it says in there, and then we found the safe.
Mr. Menendez, who entered the safe?
Craig and I.
Were you bumping into each other as you entered it?
It's not a walk-in safe, sir.
Right. It's a floor safe, correct?
Yes.
Who entered the safe?
Nobody entered the safe.
Did
We
you-
stood outside of it. Sir.
Did you remove something from that safe?
Yes.
And on July 14th, 1988, you and your brother entered the Calabasas residence of Michael Ginsburg, correct?
Yes.
And you removed a combination safe and its contents from a closet,
Yes.
a VCR.
I don't remember everything that was removed. But if it's in there, it was removed.
This is part of the stipulation. China,
I'm
silverware.
going to object to reading the stipulation. I think it's confusing the words. And I would
Why
object.
don't you rephrase the question so it's not confusing?
Do you remember removing with your brother from this house in this residential burglary that you and your brother committed a combination safe?
Yes.
Your Honor, asked and answered.
You remember removing a VCR?
Not specifically.
China,
Yes.
silverware,
Yes.
a Solo Flex machine,
Yes.
an IBM computer,
Not specifically.
jewelry.
Yes.
Did you take money in that one as well?
Objection is, it's in the stipulation, Your Honor. It's limited.
No.
Now, you and your brother were not caught on that, and you were actually turned in on September 16th, some over 2 months after you had committed these crimes, correct?
Objection
try-
found and assumes facts not contended.
Overruled.
I turned myself in on September 18th,
September 16th?
16th.
Now, when you say you turned yourself in, your father was with you, correct?
My father and an attorney.
And your father accompanied you to the Malibu Sheriff's Station, correct?
Yes, we came with a U-Haul truck.
And he assisted in taking the property that you had stolen and turning it over to the sheriffs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your father also had to make restitution to the victims, Mr. and Mrs. List and the Ginsburg, for property that was not returned, correct?
I was not aware of that, but I learned that later. It's in the stipulation.
What is it that was not returned that you remember?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I don't remember what was not returned. I thought everything was returned. We bought it in a big U-Haul truck, and my father did not discuss with me. I know he had to pay some cash. I didn't know why. He didn't discuss with me those things.
Could it have been that you spent some of the cash that you took out of the List safe?
No, I don't believe I did.
You didn't spend any of that cash? Is that your testimony?
My parents found it in my, they found, I don't remember how much money in a safe in my house,
Where was that safe?
in my closet.
How long after you had committed these crimes did they find this money in your safe?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the use of the word crimes. These were handled as juvenile court matters.
Objection overruled.
Soon after.
How soon after?
I don't remember.
At some point, you understood that your parents found some money in your safe, and did they ask you where you got the money?
Yes,
And what did you tell them?
I told them.
Told them what?
I told them that my brother, Craig, and I had gotten this from 2 houses.
Now, Craig was with you with regard to the List house, correct?
Yes.
You're the one that went into the safe, correct? Removed items from the safe.
It was Craig and I were right there. I did as well. Yes.
And you and your brother entered into the Ginsburg residence, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you describe for your father exactly what you did in those two, the grand theft from the List and the residential burglary of the Ginsburgs?
No, I didn't describe it for him at all. I told him exactly where everything was, though.
Did you describe for him or relate to him anything that you had done with respect to those two break-ins?
I told him what we took and drove him to where we had it.
Now, when did this occur as far as you telling your parents what you had done?
As far as me telling them, excuse me, I didn't hear.
What you had done?
I believe in August.
And it was on September 16th, 1988, that your father accompanied you to the Malibu Sheriff Station?
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe you told Dr. Oziel that you resented your father criticizing you and your brother for the way that you had done the burglaries?
Objection on this stage, Dr. Oziel's testimony.
No,
Did you, in fact, tell Dr. Oziel that your father had criticized you and your brother for the way you did those burglaries?
no, I didn't. What I told Dr. Oziel was that Dad told us that we were too stupid. We did them stupidly and that we got caught. And that if we were going to do something, we should do it right.
Did that go into your state of mind as to how you would commit the murder of your parents?
No,
That had nothing to do with it?
I don't,
Dude.
No. Not at all.
Do you remember talking to Dr. Oziel on October 31st and November 2nd and relating things that went into the mix of why you wanted to kill your parents?
Yes, but that's not when that was related.
Are you saying that you didn't talk about the residential burglaries in the October 31st or the November 2nd sessions?
We did, just not that statement.
In fact, you have indicated that your father discussed with you disinheriting you in September of 1988. Did the burglaries that you committed have anything to do with your father discussing with you the disinheritance?
My father did not discuss things with me. He told me I was disinherited. The burglaries play into it. He told me that I did them stupidly. I thought that it might have something to do with it, but he wouldn't have just disinherited me over a burglary issue.
Now,
He was pretty angry with me throughout that summer, mostly because I was ranked 70 in tennis, and he thought I was a pretty big failure.
So it wasn't the fact that you did residential burglaries that made him upset and want to disinherit you. It was because you were ranked 70th in tennis?
The 70th was more important to him from what I thought. I'm sure he was upset about the burglaries. There's no question about it. But I don't think that was the main, that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But I don't know exactly what played into it.
He was upset that you had committed these crimes, correct?
He was upset that, yeah, I would say he was also upset that we did it. He was upset that we did it poorly.
Now, did your mother and father, after you did the burglaries, did they see to it that you got some psychological assistance?
I think that begs the question. Calls for speculation.
We went to see Dr. Oziel because my attorney told me that in order to get the best possible verdict from the juvenile court that I went to, going to an attorney would play a large role in the attorney's evaluation of me or something along those lines.
Going to who?
You said going to an attorney.
No, I'm sorry. Going to see Dr. Oziel or a therapist would be important to the court.
Do you recall, sir, that you had an interview with Detective Zoller on September 17th, 1989 in Cranberry, New Jersey? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Page 32, counsel. Do you remember telling Detective Zoller that my parents basically made us get one after the Calabasas thing, referring to Dr. Oziel?
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
And you stated on that same date, same page, counsel 32, that Dr. Oziel is a very good friend of yours, that he spent a lot of time with you, with us basically after the killings, correct?
Yes.
So Dr. Oziel, as of September 17th, was a very good friend of yours, wasn't he?
I viewed him as a friend of mine. There's no question about that.
And now that the courts have authorized him to testify in this case, he's not such a good friend of yours anymore, is he?
Objection, Your Honor, that's argument.
Sustained.
Now, do you recall testifying in front of the jury, sir, that your brother was a very good friend of yours, that he protected you throughout your life? Remember all of that?
Yes,
And that you love your brother?
I love him very much.
Do you remember saying, sir, on November 29th, 1989, that
Your
your
Honor, for this, I would like a page cite and under.
page B, 16, and 17,
Like your version or ours? Like an opportunity, Your Honor.
Sure.
I'd like to take this.
All right, B16.
and 17, Your Honor. It's of 33.
And where are you starting?
Basically, I could paraphrase it or I could read it directly,
Where are you starting from?
where it says,
No, Your Honor, I would rather be.
Well, just tell me where it is so I can look at it.
okay, basically,
An idea.
it starts at, what about the police?
One moment.
Remember, with respect to B17, it's in the middle of the page, where it starts off, man.
All right, did counsel want to discuss this?
Yes.
You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, do you recall having a conversation with Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989
Yes.
at Gladstone's restaurant?
No, but I'm sure that's right.
Do you remember in the conversation with respect to your brother, you said, man, I wouldn't be surprised if someone...
I'm going to object to reading it.
Overall.
You're gonna miss-
Overall.
Do you recall, Mr. Menendez, stating on that day, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it and someone came out and said he did it. Do you remember making that statement about your brother?
No, I don't. If
And
you
then
could
you-
show it to me, I would.
Then you stated the bravest human being in this entire world.
Objection, Your Honor, to reading that.
Overall. You remember that?
Not really,
Why
sir.
don't you show it to him then?
Yes, Your Honor.
to get into context.
May I approach?
Yes.
Context is usually helpful.
Okay.
Pages B16 and 17 of 33
Why are you showing the 16?
to give them the context.
Wait, I haven't read it. Okay, yeah, I understand.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall having a conversation with Mr. Signorelli in which you're discussing you and your brother being suspects in the case?
That's not exactly how it went about, but yes.
And that you stated that if somebody knew that your brother was involved in the killing, he would have to be the bravest human being in this entire world to come forward with that information?
No, that's not at all what I said.
What did you mean by that? That, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it, meaning your brother, because you're referring to your brother, and someone came out and said he did it, you said the bravest human being in this entire world.
You're completely misreading it out of context. If you'd like me, I'd read it.
What did you mean by that?
I don't remember what I meant by it, but that's not what I said.
Is this, are you saying this transcript is inaccurate?
What I'm saying is the transcript is missing large portions because apparently the tape wasn't very good. I didn't know I was being tape recorded. And so there's portions in that tape which I don't know what I'm saying. In other words, I only got glimpses of my sentences. But in terms of the bravest human being in the entire world, I'm not quite sure what I meant by that. But I don't think I was referring to someone coming out and saying that my brother did it.
Now, the sentence just previous to that was, if someone came out, if he actually did do it and someone came out and said he did it, you said the bravest human being in this entire world.
And it's not reading what Mr.
Yeah.
Signorelli.
Why don't you interject the comment by Mr. Signorelli so we have it in context here.
Okay. You stated, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it and someone came out and said he did it, and Craig Signorelli said, yeah, then they'd be going, yeah. And then you stated the bravest human being in this entire world, and Craig Signorelli said, I remember Princeton. And you said the bravest human being in this entire world. What did you mean by that?
I don't know if I can see it again. I can tell you hopefully what I meant by it, but I'm not quite sure. I wasn't referring to my brother, I don't think, in terms of someone coming out and saying he did it, and therefore that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world. I think what your interpretation is of it.
Okay, let me read a couple of sentences above that then. I'm not scared of my brother at all if I died, but, and Craig says, yeah. And you say, you have nothing to fear about him. He won't touch you. And Craig says, I'm just worried about him. I don't know. He was referring to your brother, wasn't he?
Yeah, the whole conversation was about Craig Signorelli trying to get me to admit that I killed my parents because he was wearing a wiretap and the police were in a van outside. And I was telling him that I didn't do it because I had confessed to him before, and I had heard up in Santa Barbara that he was going around saying I did it. So in this conversation, I was trying to convince him in any way possible that I didn't do it. And at that point, he switched, well, maybe your brother did it. And that's, I think, the point where you're at.
So in fact, you had told Craig Signorelli, your best friend, that you had done it.
Well, yes.
And you had heard before that he had been telling people up in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Jade, told me that that's where the rumors were up in Santa Barbara, and of course I knew they were true.
And when you made the comment to Craig Signorelli on that day, you asked about the police. You said, what about the police? And Craig Signorelli said, I don't know about the police. And you said, talk to them? And he said, I have talked to them. And you said, what'd you tell them? And he said, I still think they think I'm a suspect. And you stated, surely you would have never told them anything that I told you like that, because I mean, that's, and then Craig Signorelli stated, yeah, that's what I'll tell them. And then you stated, I was, and Craig says, hi, Erik. Erik killed his parents. Yeah. And then you stated, because I could use this. They don't know who suspect me. They suspect my brother. Do you remember that?
No, if you show it to me, I can confirm it.
Yeah, approach again, Your Honor.
Yes, this is Craig Signorelli telling me that the police still think he's a suspect. And then me asking him, you didn't, basically saying that you wouldn't have told people up in Santa Barbara what I told you. And him saying, of course not, I wouldn't have done that. And me saying that, I don't know, there's too many deletions. I don't know what I'm referring to here. And then I said they suspect my brother because I knew that the detectives all did.
You stated that they don't know who committed the crime, correct?
There's a deletion. That could be what it was.
They don't suspect you, but they suspect your brother. Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
And then later on, you talked about a person having to be the bravest human being in this entire world if they came forward, if your brother actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it.
No, that's not what it says.
Flip back to page
no longer.
17 of 33, sir, where it's highlighted in orange.
Yes.
What do you mean, sir, by I wouldn't be surprised if someone came out, if he actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it, the bravest human being in this entire world? What did you mean by that?
Before I say the bravest human being in the entire world, Craig Signorelli says, yeah, then they'd be going, yeah. And then I say the bravest human being in the entire world. And then Craig says, I remember Princeton. And apparently I'm still in my thought. And I say the bravest human being in this entire world. And Craig says, yeah, that was deletion. I say, And then Craig says, do you think it's the mob? I don't believe I'm referring to someone coming out and saying my brother did it, and therefore that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world. But maybe I was. I mean, I don't remember the context of why that was said because there's too much missing.
Now, there doesn't appear to be anything missing in that this set of questions and answers, correct? There's no
Before
asterisks
and after.
from here to here where it says, if he actually did do it and someone came out and said he did it, the bravest human being in this entire world. There's nothing in between. There's nothing that's left out, correct?
Before that, I say I wouldn't be surprised if someone came out, and basically I'm saying if someone came out and said he did it. So I don't know why I'm explaining to you. I would also say that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world if I wouldn't be surprised if someone did come out and do it.
You stated if someone came out, if someone...
I'm going to object to this.
Sustained, we've been through
Okay.
this.
We've been through it.
Now, could that have been... This is November 29th, 1989. Could that have been in reference to the threats made by your brother and you to Dr. Oziel?
I'm going to object to the form of the question. There's been no testimony that Mr. Menendez, Erik, ever threatened Dr. Oziel.
I never threatened Dr. Oziel. I did the opposite. I'm the one that went to him in the first place.
Because he was a very good friend of yours, correct?
Apparently I said that on the 17th. I did think he was a nice guy, yes.
Now, when you made the statement about the person coming forward being the bravest human being in this entire world, were you referring to Dr. Oziel?
Dr. Oziel coming forward?
Yes.
No, I wasn't referring to Dr. Oziel coming forward.
Were you telling Craig Signorelli, who you have said that you told what you and your brother had done, were you telling Craig Signorelli, you better not say anything because Lyle will get you?
No, but I was telling Signorelli throughout that conversation that basically that I wish that he would not tell anyone, and he's trying to convince me that the police still think he's a suspect, so he couldn't have told anyone. I didn't know he was wiretapped.
You didn't
But-
know it at the time.
No, I didn't.
So what you said on that date was not anything that you had made up. You were actually saying what you meant on that day, or what you were feeling.
Yes.
And you had said that even though you had confessed to Craig Signorelli, you had heard that he had related that fact to other people in Santa Barbara, so you wanted to mislead him in this conversation.
Completely. I wanted to try to do it in the best way possible, that I didn't do it, and that Lyle didn't do it, and that to try to convince him of that, because I had heard that he was going around telling people, and I suspected he went to the police.
So you wanted to confuse Craig Signorelli?
No, I wanted to try to convince him that I didn't do it.
So you were lying on November 29th
Yes.
about your involvement in the killings of your parents.
Yeah, we were lying back and forth to each other, and it kept going on.
Now, you stated that you didn't want to be an actor. Is that right?
Well, I enjoyed acting, and I had thought about it, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do after my parents died.
And in November, on November 29th, you spoke to Craig Signorelli, and you told him that you wanted to make money in acting, correct?
Could you? I may very well have. If I could just see where I said it.
Is this where Kuriyama really hammers in to be like, you wanted to be this famous actor, and so therefore you're a fantastic actor, and so therefore you're lying on the stand? I have a feeling that's where it's going. Fantastic.
Okay. Was that your state of mind, that you wanted to become an actor?
No, I was, if I remember correctly, and I haven't seen it, I was telling Craig that I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a tennis player. I wanted to go into real estate. I wanted to set up a homeless charity. I wanted to do all sorts of things, and that I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
With respect to the real estate, there's been testimony in front of this jury that the purchase agreement for this penthouse suite in Marina del Rey and the Marina City Towers for $990,000. Remember, you had indicated that you had made a deposit of $29,700,
Yes.
and that was simply a loan.
Yes, it was.
Now, you yourself wanted to buy property, correct?
Yes.
And on September 17th, you had told Detective Zoller that you intended to buy some property in the Marina del Rey area
I think I told him that I wanted to move to Marina del Rey.
and buy a house, correct?
Yes.
And that this property, this $990,000 penthouse, was Lyle's idea, and it was supposed to be his house?
Well, if I remember the apartment correctly, it really had only one feasible room. I couldn't live there with Lyle. And I had no intention of living in the same apartment with Lyle anyway.
So instead of getting that $990,000 penthouse, you put an offer on a $1.5 million house in Marina del Rey, correct?
No.
Ask to approach.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall your testimony that the day that you came back after the memorial service in New Jersey, was the day that the computer people were there and that Casey Whalen picked you up from the airport?
I know that Casey Whalen picked me up from the airport. It's my best recollection that it was on September 1st, mostly because Casey, his mother, and his sister remember it was that day.
Okay, do you remember, Casey Whalen testified and he said that he picked you up from the airport on September 1st, 1989, correct?
Yes.
And that he took you back to the Beverly Hills house
Yes.
and that he left your luggage in his car.
I don't remember if he testified to that.
Yeah, your suitcases were in the car and you went inside the house for a period of time.
Yes.
And that when you were upstairs checking on your answer machine, you were called downstairs and that's when you saw this computer man.
Yes, that's what he testified to.
And he said that he didn't remember a woman with him. With the computer man.
To this accumulation and recitation of other witnesses' testimony.
Ask another question, please.
Do you remember discussing this with Casey Whalen, the fact that there was this computer person at the house on the day that you came back from the East Coast?
I never discussed it with Casey.
And he had stated in his testimony, Casey Whalen, that Craig Signorelli was not there on that day.
Objection, Your Honor, to accumulating and restating other witnesses' testimony.
Sustain.
Yep. Yeah. It
Is it your?
it has to relate back to this witness's experiences, you know, like what they were there for. You know, ask him a question about what he saw. Doesn't matter, you know, whether someone else said that they saw something or not, unless it ties directly into some sort of impeachment or something like that. But like to be like, well, Casey Whalen testified to XYZ. Okay, that's Casey Whalen's testimony. What does it have to do with this witness? Even if he was there in the room while he testified, like you can't just try to bootstrap in. Like, are we really going to like bootstrap every single witness that has been in front of the jury at this point through this witness? Come on.
It's your memory, sir, that when Casey Whalen came in and testified, he was accurate as to what he did on the day that he brought you home from the airport?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as calling for an opinion from each of the other witnesses. I would ask this way.
Objection overruled as to that question.
What Casey remembers and his sister and his mother remember is what they remember. My memory is more vague than theirs.
Okay, you said that you remember, I believe when your attorney asked you, you said that you remember specifically that the day you came back is the day that the computer man was at your house.
That's my best memory. That is my best memory, but I wasn't as sure about it until I heard that Casey, his mother and his sister confirmed that is the day.
Well, could it have been the next day that the computer man came?
It is possible.
Okay, and so when Casey Whalen said that he didn't know where you were the next day, that he just took you and brought you home and took you to your car that day, could that be possible?
I don't know if he testified to that. I know he testified that the next day, if I came in on a Friday, then the next day he did drive me back to my house. If I came in on a Thursday, then it was the Friday that he took me back to my house. But those days went by so quick for me. I don't remember as much as I would like to.
Now, when you came back from the East Coast, normally before your parents were killed by you and your brother, would you put your plane tickets on their American Express card?
Before my parents died, would I do it?
Right. Would you have a record on their American Express card regarding plane flights that you took?
I don't know. They did everything. I don't know how they bought tickets or didn't, or by whom. Or
once your parents were killed, did you get yourself a credit card or anything of that sort?
yeah, my Aunt Martha gave me a credit card.
Okay. Now, do you recall purchasing a ticket to come back from New Jersey with a credit card?
I don't recall. I know that most of my tickets that I bought went through my Aunt Terry, who was a travel agent. But very well could have. I just don't have a good memory of it.
Okay, do you remember where you were? Well, which airport did you fly out of to come back to Los Angeles from the East Coast?
My best recollection is that I flew out of Newark.
From where?
Newark.
Newark Airport?
Yeah.
Do you remember going to that airport and making the purchase of
No,
the ticket?
I don't have a good recollection of pretty much any of those events.
Do you know which airline you went on?
No.
You have no idea?
I flew so much during that time. I probably touched on every airline at one point.
Now, do you have any idea how it could be ascertained where you, what day you flew on?
Your Honor, I can object to the form of the question.
Sustained.
Do you have any recollection of that flight back from New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey?
I have a good recollection of meeting Casey at the baggage claim, but I've tried really hard to remember the exact day I flew back, where it was from, and the actual flight, because I know it's important, but I haven't been able to do it.
Do you remember how you got to the airport in New Jersey?
I don't. I know there's records indicating all sorts of things, but I don't know how I got there.
Now, was Casey Whalen accurate when he said that he picked you up from the airport in the baggage claim,
Yes, that he did.
and that he brought you home,
Yes, he did.
and that you needed to pick up some things,
Yes, I did.
and you went into the house and you went into your room and you checked on your messages?
Your Honor, is the question, is Casey accurate, or is the question what did the witness do? Because we'd objected.
Sustained. Why don't you rephrase the
Okay.
question?
Is that what happened so far, that you went up to get your messages and Casey was in your room with you?
That could be accurate.
And that then you went to Casey's, actually a computer person came, correct?
I know a computer person came at one point, and I remember them vaguely.
And it was the day that Casey had picked you up from the airport.
That I cannot be sure of.
Now, you heard testimony from Casey Whalen that it couldn't have been Craig Signorelli there because he had taken you from the airport, correct?
No, I believe what he was saying is that it couldn't have been Craig Signorelli there because he was there.
Right, and that was the day that he picked you up from the airport, he testified.
Yeah, I think that's what he testified.
In your recollection on examination by your counsel was that you recall specifically that the computer person came on the day that you came back from the East Coast. So that supports what Casey Whalen said. Is that correct?
Is that what I said on?
Object to the form of the question.
It's compound.
Okay.
Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, do you remember testifying that when your attorney asked you if you have a specific recollection of when the computer man came, you said yes. Remember that?
Yeah, I know he came on a Friday.
And you remember that was the day that you came back from the East Coast.
I believe that was the day, but that's been severely reinforced by his mother, his sister, and him saying that they thought that was the day. I cannot be sure.
And in fact, when they testified to that, they said that later that evening, you all went to a Mexican restaurant, correct?
I believe they testified to that.
And that was the first day that you had arrived back from New Jersey.
Your Honor, I'm not clear again if the question is what the witnesses said or.
All right, let's phrase it as a question, and
Is it-
let's go with an intelligible question, please.
Is that your recollection, sir, that the day that you came back from New Jersey is the day that this computer man came?
That would be, I couldn't say for certain.
Would it be your recollection that it was some other day that the computer man came?
the day that I got back?
Right.
That that could be. I remember it more the other way than that way, but I just can't be, I can't tell you 100% on this.
When Casey Whalen may be wrong then about when he was there, is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, it's calling for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, you heard Craig Signorelli say that he was there when the computer man came, correct?
Yes, that's what he said.
And that he remembered the pregnant wife?
That's what he said, yes.
And that he recalled what occurred during the time when Mr. and Mrs. Heyman were there.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this again. This is mutilating and stating otherwise.
Sustained.
Do you recall, sir, that the Heymans came in and they identified Craig Signorelli as a person that was with you?
Same objection, Your Honor. Other witnesses testify.
Sustained.
Is it your testimony that it was Casey Whalen that was with you that day rather than Craig Signorelli?
Yes, I believe that's what everyone believes.
Excuse me, I believe that's what.
Everyone believes. That's what I believe too.
And when you say everyone, that doesn't include Mr. and Mrs. Heyman, and it doesn't include Craig Signorelli either.
No, I believe that Mrs. or Mrs. Heyman described a man that was stockier than I was, with sandy hair and light eyes. And Craig Signorelli has black hair, black eyes, and is thinner than I am, whereas Casey has sandyish hair, blue eyes, and is a football player. And that's why I believe they're mistaken about
So when they came in to testify, they were wrong
wrong about.
Craig Signorelli being there that day.
Yes, Casey was there.
And Casey says he was there because he knows he brought you home from the airport that day.
I'm going to object to this again, Your Honor. as to why
Sustained.
Casey was
Sustained.
there.
Objection sustained.
You recall on the day after you got back from the airport or from the East Coast that you were brought back to your house in Beverly Hills, correct, to pick up your car?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that you would spend time at the Beverly Hills house during the day because you were just drawn back to the house.
My recollection is coming back to me that I think my grandmother was there during those later times, and that's why I went back to the house. But I did go back to the Beverly Hills house. I know that after the airport.
Did your grandmother beat you back from the memorial service on the East Coast?
No, she didn't.
Okay, so when you came back, was anyone there at the Beverly Hills house?
The security guards.
Okay, and you had gotten a note that your brother had been there earlier.
Either that day or the other day before.
It may have been the very day that you came back.
It may have been.
And do you remember Casey Whalen actually being there throughout the time that this computer man was there?
Yeah, my best memory is that Casey was there. I don't have I only remember bits and pieces of what happened when the computer person was there.
Okay, so the first day you're with Casey. Now, the second day that you were back in Los Angeles, do you recall anything about that day?
No,
Besides going to pick up your car in Beverly Hills?
I really don't even recall much about the day that I flew in, other than the fact that I flew in.
And that Casey Whalen picked you up?
Yeah, I know he picked me up at the airport because I have a definite memory of that, but I don't remember much about most of those days.
You do remember going out to dinner on the first day that you were there with Mr. Casey Whalen, his sister, and his mother?
I don't have a great memory of that, no.
You have a moment, Sean? Mr. Menendez, do you recall just prior to flying back to the East Coast where you were?
No, I don't.
I have some U.S. Air records May I have the records comprised of
Your Honor,
two
may we
pages?
approach?
Are you, we can mark the exhibit as 292. Yes, you may approach.
Mr. Menendez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 292. And ask you if that refreshes your recollection as to when you came back to Los Angeles from the East Coast.
You could help me.
Well, Your Honor, I'm going to object to being helped if it doesn't refresh his recollection by looking at it.
Overall, he's just pointing to a particular portion of the document.
Does this mean that I flew back on that day?
Mr. Menendez, doesn't that indicate that you flew back to Los Angeles on August 31st, 1989?
Your Honor, I want to object to the question. This doesn't say anything about who flew anywhere.
Overall.
At 12:15, it says I flew at 12:15.
Yes, New York time.
That doesn't go along with my memory, only because if you fly at 12:15, you get back to California close to 3:15, 4 o'clock, and I'm quite sure I was back by 2.
Now, isn't it a 3-hour difference between here and New York?
Yeah, I think it's a 6-hour flight and a 3-hour difference.
So Casey Whalen picked you up on August 31st, correct? That was not the day that the Haymans came to your house.
Well, I'd like to say this with the ticket, and it may be the ticket, but my memory is that I was back in Los Angeles somewhere between 12 and 2 o'clock, like Casey remembers. And if I flew on this ticket, assuming the plane left on time, I could not have gotten to the baggage before 4. And that doesn't go with my memory, but this may be the
I'm
ticket.
going to object, Your Honor. The question was whether it refreshed his recollection.
Overall, the answer will stand.
Mr. Menendez, you flew out of LaGuardia Airport, correct?
My recollection is that I flew out of Newark.
And isn't it true that you were with Mark Heffernan at the U.S. Open in New York on the night before you flew back to Los Angeles?
I don't know. I knew I was with Mark Heffernan in New York at a hotel, which I stayed over because I remember seeing a match at the U.S. Open, and I met Mark there.
And Mark
But-
Heffernan's wife was with you at that hotel, correct?
Yeah, we all slept in the same room. There
In
were 2
fact,
beds.
you had a bodyguard with you, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And the bodyguard took you to the airport the next morning on August 31st, correct?
Yeah, I know there are records of that, of a limo with him going to LaGuardia, but I know Detective Zoller on the 17th thought I left on the 1st with a ticket under the name of Eric Tam. And I have another record of a limousine picking me up on September 1st.
Now, Mr. Menendez,
So the records are so jumbled that I wish I could tell you for sure, but I may very well have left on the 31st is what I'm saying. I just don't remember.
and isn't it true that the security guard that was with you was a New York police officer?
Yes, he was.
And he took you to LaGuardia. It wasn't New Jersey. It wasn't Newark as you had testified that you flew out of. Isn't that correct?
Rephrase the question.
You testified, sir, that you flew out of Newark, correct?
That's my best recollection that I flew out of Newark.
And you recall being taken after the U.S. Open and after seeing your coach, Mark Heffernan, in New York, you indicated right now that the bodyguard took you to LaGuardia Airport, correct?
After the U.S. Open, I couldn't have gone to the U.S. Open that morning if the plane left at 12:15. But I know there's the record of that, and that's why I believe that I may have left on the 31st, and I can't be sure. But I simply don't remember. I believe he says he took me to a Delta flight too, and this is U.S. Air.
Now, who said they took you to a Delta flight?
I thought that's what the records indicated, that the car went to the Delta terminal. If I knew for sure, I'd tell you. I don't. And it may have been the 31st, it may have been the 1st. I don't.
If you had arrived in Los Angeles on August 31st and Casey Whalen saw a computer person there not remembering a pregnant wife, did you have a computer person there on the 31st of August?
No, definitely not.
But you spoke, according to Mrs. Whalen, Mrs. Cohen, you spoke about the erasure of a computer the day you came in to Los Angeles, correct?
Yes, I believe that's what they said. We did speak about it.
Now-
After I got the note from Lyle, and after the Haymans were there, and the Haymans said the computer was wiped, I knew what Lyle had done.
But the testimony was that you were talking about the erasure of the computer on the day you came back from the East Coast, the day that Casey Whalen picked you up, correct?
The testimony was that we were talking about the computer on a Friday night because Katie said that she knew she was working that night, and that's how she could pinpoint it to Friday, which was September 1st.
The testimony was that Casey Whalen said that you had your suitcases in his car. You simply went upstairs, you got your messages off of your answer machine, and when you came downstairs, the computer man was there, and he didn't remember any pregnant wife with him. Isn't that correct, sir?
Sustained. Sustained. It's
Now,
argumentative.
When you said,
Wow, we actually got an argumentative objection sustained here. So this is interesting because to sort of recap what's going on here, Kuriyama is cross-examining Erik Menendez on this point of when did you see the computer person, right? This is definitely early 90s, right? Because computers were like so new that like they didn't have a term for a technician to come in and take a look at computers. Like now it's the IT guy, right? This is who we're talking about is an IT guy. But back in the late 80s, early 90s, the computer person, the person who knows computers, computer person. So his testimony has been partly that he's like, I know it was Casey Whalen that was there and not Craig Signorelli. It sounds like Cinderella. That he said that the reason why he knows, or one of the reasons why he knows it was not Signorelli, but Casey Whalen, is because Casey Whalen picked him up from the airport and took him straight home. And then the computer guy was there. And so that all basically was wrapped up on the same day. So the question is, all right, could he have been making it up? Could he have not been? Or maybe is this a way that his brain has sort of condensed some memories? That's also possible. The problem with a situation like that is for the jury to basically be able to figure out, okay, which of these memories have been condensed together and which of these memories are exactly the way that he says that they happened. How do we know the difference? And that's where corroboration often comes in. But anyway, but this is a bit of a fair point by Kuriyama to say that to go through this sort of information. And that actually kind of leads into this question by Tish earlier. What are Kuriyama's strong sides? When does he shine? I would say if I had to give him a compliment, it would be on tenacity, right? The fact that he is willing to go over and over and over again until he gets an answer that he wants to get, or at least something as close to it as possible. I don't know if he actually shines when he does this, but I will say that he does have a lot of tenacity, and he does have I don't know. He has made a few points in some of the stuff that he's cross-examined Erik on. This is one of them, but that they're this is interesting. If he's got him on the flights, when he supposedly flew. Trail says for when Erik came in, and that was not the same day that the computer guy says that he was in. There's a little bit of an inconsistency there. Not all inconsistencies are fatal to one side or another. Sometimes it's just a weird inconsistency. Whether that's a weird inconsistency here or whether that is a bit more damaging to the defense case is obviously up to perception. All right, let's continue on.
and Casey Whalen said that Craig Signorelli could not have been there that day because it was Casey Whalen who picked you up from the airport.
Yeah.
That's inaccurate, isn't it? Because it happened the next day.
That's, no.
Just
Go ahead.
be a witness. And object, Your Honor, that it's argumentative, it's not valid.
Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, was Casey Whalen lying?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. No, it's not just Casey, it's his sister and his mother, and they're not lying.
And they all recalled that the day that you came back from New Jersey, that was the day that this computer person came, correct?
I believe that's what they said. I know they said it was a Friday.
But you didn't come back on a Friday, you came back on a Thursday, didn't you?
I'm not sure of that.
It's a good place to stop here.
All right, we'll be in recess then, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to keep you this late, but we were hopeful we could finish this, but we haven't, so we'll have to resume on Tuesday. Don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. Don't look at any of the news coverage. We'll see you all back, and don't look at anything else or hear anything or permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this case outside the courtroom in any form. And we'll see you all back here Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Have a good weekend.
The rest of this,
People are represented. Also, counsel for Lyle Menendez is in court, although
so this might be some argument here. If that's what it's looking like it's going to be. I thought there was testimony until the end, but let's play just a little bit just to get an idea of what's going on. And then we might end this pretty soon. Or if not, there's like another 30, 40 minutes.
although he is not present. This is a hearing prior to the resumption of testimony relating to only the Erik Menendez jury. And counsel had requested that the court review some materials this morning prior to commencing this hearing. I have done that. What is it specifically that counsel want to discuss with the court?
Your Honor, there was a question that I had posed to Erik Menendez in cross-examination regarding the attempted purchase of a piece of real estate in Marina del Rey. The asking price at the time was $1.495 million. An offer was made by Erik Menendez at $1.1 million. When I had asked that question, the defense objected, and they wanted an opportunity to be heard regarding that issue. The second issue is a statement that Erik Menendez made on November 29th, 1989 on tape, in which he says regarding the murders, there's not much I can do, man, but I carry a gun around with me. I had asked the court for a ruling as to that piece of evidence, and the defense indicated that they would provide the court with their arguments. I have received nothing in that regard, so I want those issues to be resolved before we start, so I won't have to go up to the court and ask for a sidewalk.
And what is the defense response? Well, either.
Okay. I'm going to fast forward a little bit and see if we get to actual testimony here. Although this is interesting. So I apologize to anyone that was looking forward to seeing a response. Okay, let's see. Judges talking here. Okay. So now we've got the next morning, I think. Okay, let's get the last little bit here of the hearing and then see, we might get some context from it.
Short of that, I don't see the relevance of this evidence.
All right. Well, it goes to its weight, not to its admissibility as far as how one evaluates it. At this point, as I've indicated, it's not and would not be received for the purpose of dealing with the people's case in chief, but and the reasons for the admissibility of evidence of this nature in that regard, but only to impeach and to attack the defense evidence that's been offered and would be received in that light only. And the court is weighing this evidence under Section 352 of the Evidence Code and finds that the probative value of it outweighs any potential prejudice or undue consumption of time, and will permit this evidence to be received for the purpose of impeaching the evidence offered by the defense in this regard. Court also notes that this evidence, according to the people's offer, was not known by the prosecution until August the 26th of 1993, which was well after the people had rested their case. All right, any other matters before the jury comes out? Okay, then let's have the jury out, please. Jury is in the courtroom. Good morning to you all. And we're ready to resume with the trial and the cross-examination of the witness, Erik Menendez, in front of the blue jury only. I'll remind you that you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, directing your attention to November 29th, 1989, do you recall having a conversation with Craig Signorelli?
Yes, I do.
And in that conversation, do you recall talking about 2 screenplays that you were currently working on?
Yes.
And you discussed those screenplays?
Yes.
Were you excited about doing those screenplays, writing those screenplays?
Overall.
In a sense, yes.
And in that same conversation, do you recall talking about buying real estate?
I think we had part of the conversation was about real estate, about something to do, yes.
Do you recall indicating that you wanted to buy a house in Beverly Hills in that conversation?
No.
Do you recall talking about buying, in that conversation, buying a house for $8 million in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, we were talking about ideas that we were having back and forth. And I said one great idea would be to buy this house and develop it and this and that.
And also in that same conversation, did you speak about your uncle, Brian Anderson,
Yes.
and how you had discussed with him investing millions of dollars and getting a return of $30 to $40 million?
It's
Remember that?
actually the other way around. But I told him about how Brian, my uncle, had come to me and talked about the best way to handle the money would be to invest it in real estate and to go around buying it. And
Probably not wrong about that, actually.
And in that regard, do you recall accompanying your brother to the Marina City Club?
yes,
And you testified that you had loaned your brother this $29,700 for the $990,000 penthouse?
yes, I did.
Now, on your own, did you make an offer on a $1.495 million single-family residence in the Silver Strand of Marina del Rey in February of 1990?
Object to the form of the question on what the house is worth has yet been determined.
All right, rephrase the question, please.
Yes. Mr. Menendez, do you recall in February of 1990 being shown a residence in the Silver Strand area of Marina del Rey?
I don't specifically remember it, but I may have.
Do you recall a real estate agent by the name of Larry Cohen?
Yes.
Did he show you some properties in Marina del Rey?
He showed me several different properties.
Houses that you were interested in?
Yeah, I wanted to move into a house since we were going to be selling, well, the estate was going to be selling all the other houses. So I looked at a few houses in Marina del Rey.
In that regard, do you recall making an offer of $1.1 million on a particular piece of property in the Silver Strand area of Marina del Rey?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Menendez, also in that November 29th, 1989 conversation that you had with Craig Signorelli, do you recall telling him that you carried a firearm?
Yes.
Why was that you carried a firearm?
I didn't carry a firearm.
Did you make the statement, "There's not much I can do, man, but I carry a gun around with me"?
Yes.
Was that in response to the people that had killed your parents? You were afraid of them?
No, actually, it was in response to Craig Signorelli trying to get out of me on tape that I killed my parents, and me trying to convince him, since I figured that he was going to the police, that I didn't do it. And I went as far as telling him that I carried around a firearm for protection.
Were you lying?
Yes.
Now, you didn't know you were being taped that day, did you?
No.
Mr. Menendez, recalling the 24th of August, the day that you and your brother had bought the Rolex watches, you recall that day?
Yes.
And you used a credit card that day, correct?
I don't know.
You don't recall?
I didn't do the buying. I really wasn't concerned how he bought it.
With respect to the Rolex watch purchase and the money clips, did you see your brother take out $15,000 in cash currency?
If you say he bought it with a credit card, he bought it with a credit card. I just don't remember.
You had indicated that you had gone earlier in the day and had made some purchases of, I believe, ties and coats. Would that be fair to say, at Bullock's?
No. I don't remember any ties, but I know I went there because I didn't have a sports jacket, and I needed to wear one to the funeral.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall making two purchases on credit cards at Bullock's?
I'm
One,
going to object to this and ask to approach improper rebuttals.
Overall.
If I did, I did. I don't remember.
I believe you had testified in direct examination that you had purchased some slacks that you had to get altered that day.
Objection to states of testimony.
Rephrase the question.
Okay. Mr. Menendez, didn't you testify that you had bought a garment and that particular day you had to have it altered?
Yeah, I bought a sports jacket. I don't remember buying any slacks, but I believe I had to have something altered. A sports jacket, I think it was. I'm not sure.
And that was at Bullock's?
I believe I had it altered at Bullock's. I mean, I just don't remember now.
Do you recall, sir, that there were two purchases at Bullock's, one for the ties and coats at $1,663.51 that was put on a credit card? Remember that?
Okay.
Do you recall that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. There's been no discovery of this.
Did you wish to approach?
As to the last two questions, and one of which was answered, the other question was not answered. The last question was not answered. The previous question was, and the answer, those two questions and the one answer, the court sustains the objection. Those questions and the one answer are stricken, and the jury is admonished to disregard them. All right, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, do you recall
always
actually going to shop with your brother?
It's always a great instruction, right? When the judge has to be like, yeah, jury, just ignore the last couple questions that were asked, and one of which was answered, and just erase that out of your brain. It's never completely helpful unless they're just not paying attention in the first place.
Your brother prior to going to the jewelry store to get the Rolex watches and the money clips?
What do you mean by shop? I went there specifically to buy a sports jacket.
Okay. Was there any other purchases that you made that day besides the sports jacket?
I don't remember any.
Were you with your brother all the time that day?
I know I went to Bullock's with him because I didn't have any suits or any sports jackets. I know that.
You had indicated that you had bought a coat. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have to buy some slacks to go along with the coat?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that I had slacks at my house. I know that I wore slacks on different occasions, but I just don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall pulling out cash at any one of those transactions to pay for the purchase that day?
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Overall.
I don't think so. It was an expensive coat. I don't think I would have paid in cash.
Is it your belief that credit cards were used, sir?
Probably.
Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that you believed the BBC stood for
Oh
what?
my God, are we back?
And
We're back on the BBC again? Come on. We've been through this like 5,000 times.
The question is vague, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
Okay. Do you recall being asked on direct examination about what you believe BBC stood for?
not specifically.
Do you recall testifying that you believed Dr. Oziel must have been referring to the British Broadcasting Company?
Time is a flat circle, am I right?
I remember doing that on Cross.
And this movie that was discussed, you believed was on the British Broadcasting Company?
I don't know what he was referring to. It's in his notes exactly. I was just giving my best guess.
Now, would another one of your guesses be the Billionaire Boys Club?
Oh my God.
I don't know what shows Dr. Oziel watches or what he was referring to there.
Yeah.
I can only give
Good
you the only reason I can guess is by the language of when he says on the BBC. And so I don't know.
And in fact, what he was referring to is something that you had stated to him, that you had watched a movie on the BBC, correct?
Judge, can I ask the officer?
Yes.
No, that's not what he was referring to.
Now, isn't it true that you know the BBC to mean the Billionaire Boys Club?
The BBC
Yes.
are initials for Banner Boys
Objection,
Club.
asked and answered before the other two juries.
There was an area here that was reserved.
Yes.
And
Was there?
Is that,
What was your answer?
Yeah, that is the initials BBC are for several things. One of them is Billionaire Boys Club, definitely.
do you recall on November 29th, 1989, having a discussion with Craig Signorelli about forming a group of 4 people?
It wasn't really a discussion. I was telling him an idea I had.
Okay. And you were saying that you wanted to form a group of 4 people that you could trust, correct?
Yeah, I specifically remember doing that. I was doing that on purpose.
And that these people would be working under you and they would be making $1 to $2 million a year, correct?
At that point, I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't have any idea.
Do you recall Craig Signorelli say to you, kind of like in BBC? Do you recall that question?
Yeah, I recall that.
And do you recall your answer, kind of like in BBC, but that you know it's just everywhere? Do you remember making that statement?
Yeah.
Do you recall that you stated that you wanted to get something that would set you apart from the other people in this company?
No.
Do you recall talking about a Rolex watch, the one that you would have to buy in a, I believe you put it, you'd have to order it. It's blue that fades into black. Do you remember making that statement relative to this group that you were going to form? Everyone would have to get this Rolex watch.
No. If you can show me.
May I approach, Ron? Okay.
What's your side page?
It's page A3 of 10. Of 10.
On the second side.
Menendez, I'm going to show you the transcript. It's page A3 of 10 regarding the conversation
remember.
that you had with Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989.
Yeah.
Did you take a look at this section?
Yeah, now I remember.
And when you were discussing this group of 4 people that would make $1 to $2 million, and you discussed having a Rolex watch, what were you talking about?
I was specifically talking about forming a group of people that you could trust, because I was trying to send Craig a message that I didn't trust him, and that I believed that he was telling people what I told him. And so I was saying, yeah, I wish it wasn't something that I was actually planning on doing. I was saying, yeah, I wish I could form this company. I want to do this. These are some people who I can trust. And he said everyone should have a handshake. Everyone should wear something that is status, just sets them apart. And I was trying to say, I don't trust you. I think you're telling the police. And this was one of the things I was doing.
Mr. Menendez, were you going to start the British Broadcasting Company?
No, that wasn't an idea I had.
So what did you mean by the BBC?
Objection, Your Honor.
That-
Say the BBC.
That's what Craig said.
And you agreed with him, it was like the BBC. What did you mean by that?
The Billionaire Boys Club.
Now, you also made the statement, sir, that you know, and if you leave the group, fuck, I would not betray that group. What did you mean by that?
I was telling Craig that I didn't trust him and I thought he was betraying me.
And what would happen to those people that betrayed you?
Objection, on self-suspicion.
I don't know. I was just making the statement to sort of tell him, you're betraying me. But I'm not really a confrontational person like that, and I didn't know how to say it to him. So I was trying to give him the best message I could.
You were trying to threaten him?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I could never hurt Craig. I was just saying basically that I was hurt. I thought he was a friend of mine, and now I hear up in Santa Barbara that he's telling everyone what I told him. And so I'm trying to do my best now to convince him that I wasn't involved in the killing.
So you were mad at him because he was telling the truth, that you indeed were involved in the killing of your parents, correct?
No, I wasn't mad at him for telling the truth. I was mad at him for telling people something that I told him at a time when I wanted his help. And that's all.
Now, Mr. Menendez, Dr. Oziel had testified that you told him that you believed that you couldn't be connected to the crime because the guns were purchased in San Diego. You couldn't be connected to the guns. The prints in the house were your prints, et cetera. Do you remember that testimony?
Do I remember he testified to that, or is that what
Yes.
happened?
Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And do you remember testifying in front of this jury that you believed from the first day that you would get caught? Do you remember that testimony?
What I said is that I believed from the moment after that I would get caught. There was too many things the police could find.
Do you recall, again, November 29th, 1989, in your conversation with Craig Signorelli, for counsel, it's B19 of 33, that you stated, "I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything." And then again at B22 of 33, in the same conversation with Craig Signorelli.
I'm trying to misquoting the statement of the witness on the transcript.
Page 19.
D19 33 on its first bit.
I'll have these again.
Very well, Your Honor. Do you remember making this statement, sir? "I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything. People heard things that," and then unintelligible. Do you remember making that statement?
No. Could I?
Read out of context about the response in the next statement.
Well, his answer is no, he doesn't remember that. And I believe he wanted what the benefit.
Yeah.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Okay, when you say you've known from the beginning, there were no clues, no one heard anything, what did you mean by that?
What I was saying is, after I tell him that I don't know who did it, and he's telling me, well, why don't you check it out? People, you should know, or don't you want to find out who did it? And I say to him, Craig said, "You're not going to check it out anymore?" And I said, "How am I going to check it out?" And he says, "I don't know." And I say, "That's a good question. How can I check it out? I know they're not going to find anyone. I've known from the beginning, no clues. No one heard anything. People heard things that," and then it goes on about firecrackers in the middle of August.
Okay.
I wasn't referring to me, though.
Mr. Menendez, when you said, "I know they're not going to find anyone," isn't that what you told Dr. Oziel too?
No, you're misunderstanding the two conversations. one in which I'm telling Craig, the reason I'm not going to go investigate myself is because they're not going to find anyone. And with Dr. Oziel, I told him that the police don't know anything, and that the only way they could find me was through the guns in San Diego.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall telling Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989, regarding the people that committed this crime, the shooters of your parents? You stated, "Man, we're talking about special hitmen, special shotguns, and knew exactly what they were doing in and out of the house. No one saw anything. No one heard anything." And Craig Signorelli responding, "Doesn't make sense." And you responding, "We're talking serious hitmen."
Yeah.
Now, you believed that you and your brother had done this in a way that you would not get caught, correct?
No.
And that's
Just
what
the
you're
opposite.
talking about.
No, you're just pulling it out of context again.
Yeah, he's testified multiple times to basically feeling like they were going to get caught right away. Like he sat down and waited for sirens to start sounding and to hear those coming to the house like right after the shootings.
Craig and I are again having a conversation. It's the same conversation about the fact that nobody knows, and he keeps pressing me. Well, don't you want to find out who did it? Aren't you going to find out who did it? And he's apparently trying to get me to say something because he's on tape. And I'm telling him, these were hitmen. I don't know who did it. No one heard anything. I'm not going to be able to find out who did it. These are serious people. They knew what they were doing, etc. And
Now,
that's
Mr.
what's
Menendez,
happening.
this statement that you make mirrors what Dr. Oziel said. You said that you didn't think you were going to get caught, and you didn't think there was any way for you and your brother to have to stand trial on this case. Isn't that correct?
Argumentative, ask the answer.
No, it doesn't mirror what Dr. Oziel said in the slightest.
I have nothing further at this time, Lord.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, no question.
All right, thank you. You may step
Hooray.
down.
This must not be excused.
You may step down, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of the testimony for today. That's the end of Erik being on the stand entirely. Look at this. Look at this. Indy is so incredibly bored by this testimony that has been dragged out that she is absolutely exhausted. Did you ever think that we would finally get through Erik's testimony, or did you think we would be there forever? For a while, it started to feel like we were going to be there forever, right? Anyhow, so that was a lot of testimony. There was way more there than needed to be done, and I think that is just because it dragged on way longer than necessary. Anyhow. So thank you so much for joining us today. And once again, I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas. If you guys celebrate, or if not, I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Also, Marie Garound, thank you so much for gifting 5 Legal Bites memberships. Thank you so much. So kind and generous of you. Cindy, Denise M, Dalabar, Holly M, and Gail E. Borton, you have all been gifted memberships. So welcome, or welcome back to Bite Club. I hope to see you guys on Friday for our casual members only live stream, where we just kind of hang out and just chat for about an hour or two. So yeah, come join us for that. And thanks again, Marie Garound, for the memberships gifting. Anyhow, so yeah, that's it for today. Thank you again to everybody for joining us, whether you're watching on live or on replay. Can I talk? And thank you to everybody that has been in the chat. Thanks to folks that are commenting on these videos. Thanks to folks for liking the videos. And of course, thanks so much for everybody that is adding to any of the commentary on this, because it's been so interesting to see all the different perspectives on it. Not everybody has the same perspective, and I love the fact that people keep it respectful. And on that note, thank you so much, as always, to the mods for also helping to to maintain that sort of culture that we have here where you can disagree with other people, just do so respectfully. So anyhow, I think that for me about does it. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Tuesday and a wonderful rest of your week if you do not hear from me in the meantime. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.